Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Round 2 podcast. My name is Nikki, and I am your host. And I am super excited to be recording this week because I am sitting for the first time face-to-face with my friend Kelly. We got introduced via Instagram from a mutual friend that we both do know in real life, but this is the first time we're meeting in real life. Yay. So it is very fun for both of us. And I want to give her a moment to introduce herself.
Thanks for having me, Nikki. I'm so glad to meet you.
Yeah,
Finally,
me too.
After many conversations we've had. My name is Kelly, and I am a stay-at-home mom to two girls, 14 and 8. I am a nurse. I don't currently work as a nurse, but I worked for Kaiser for 22 years as a medical assistant. And now, after 22 years, I'm now staying home with my two kids, taking care of them, sports, just doing all the mom stuff.
That's awesome.
And I've been married.
A nice change.
Yes, it is a nice change. But I've been married for 18 years to my husband, and just living a good life so far.
That's great. So your path in your medical career was changed, not necessarily because you wanted it to.
Correct.
I mean, ultimately it was your choice.
Correct.
But it wasn't a choice you would have made at this stage in your life.
No.
So why don't you share a little bit about that and kind of what happened and what made you choose what you did?
Okay. Well, I'll back up. I've been a medical assistant for 22 years with Kaiser. Worked in the same department. I was in adult medicine the entire time. And it was about 10 years into me working at Kaiser where I decided I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to do something that was more challenging. And so I went back to school, still continued to stay as a medical assistant, but I went to school for nursing. Did 2 years in nursing school. The hardest thing I ever did was nursing school. But I loved it. I loved, it was nerve-wracking and it was hard and it was, like I said, it was challenging and all the things, all the emotions, no time. I didn't feel like I had a life or anything.
So were you still working while in school and raising kids?
Yes.
Very busy.
At the time I only had, my daughter, my oldest daughter. She was probably like 3 or 4 at the time, but
Well, still, that's a busy stage.
It is, especially when you feel kind of guilty for not being there for just my mom had to take over and help me out, and it was a big change in my life. But I loved nursing. I loved nursing school. I loved how you could learn the human. It was almost like it was a little bit of a puzzle. It was like trying to figure out what's wrong with somebody and helping them and seeing them get better. Yeah. It was always something I loved. And then I worked at a hospital. Kaiser did not hire me as a nurse, but I had to go elsewhere to work, to get my foot in the door and to gain experience before Kaiser would hire me. So I went and I worked at a hospital. I worked on the telemetry floor for about a year.
What's telemetry?
It's basically like anybody who comes in who needs to have a heart monitor.
Oh, okay.
So it's not just monitoring them. It's like you going to a hospital and being put on a med-surg basic care floor.
Okay.
But these people are switched to a telemetry floor if they're, for some reason, they have a heart condition that needs to be monitored, along with taking care of them.
Okay.
So I did that for about a year, and I would say probably about that 6 months into it, I started to have a lot of anxiety about it. And it wasn't so much the actual, I didn't have anxiety over taking care of my patients. It was actually getting to the hospital.
Oh.
It was I went through a huge drastic change in my life. I cried every single day. I didn't want to go to work.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't like the environment I was in. I didn't like the floor that I was in. I didn't like bedside nursing. It was, as much as I loved the connection and like helping people. I didn't like what bedside nursing was, and I had a huge issue with it. And I mean, I was very depressed. It was probably the deepest and darkest time in my life.
Oh my gosh.
So I was actually going to work with a lot of these like demons where I felt just, I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be there at all. And that played for about 6 months. And it was to the point where, you know, I was literally every day trying to get out of that situation. Like I would be like, you know, if I just got in an accident and didn't hurt myself, like,
oh my gosh,
but if I like could break my leg, then I wouldn't have to go to work. It was those types of things that like I would actually pull into the hospital and like throw up before I would go onto the floor.
Oh
like
my
I had
gosh.
like severe anxiety about getting there, and it affected me big time. Headaches, crying all the time. And you know, I had a daughter at the time. Like I was just, it was a really big struggle, and it's still like a little PTSD about it. But I ended up quitting. And my goal was I was going to find a different area in nursing that didn't affect me so much.
Yeah.
Like something that allowed me, you know, that I was happy at. And I wanted to go to work, and I didn't have these feelings. And then as I was trying to navigate that path, I got pregnant with my second child. And I just, from that point on, I just decided, you know what, I was going to take a break. And then I was going to just stay home with my kids. I was pregnant. I didn't want to do nursing while I was pregnant. That stress of the PTSD, it like bothered me. So then after that, but let me just say, I did still work for Kaiser as a medical assistant. I worked very little. I worked weekends, every other weekend. So it was just kind of like, I kept Kaiser because I wanted to keep my foot in the door.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep my foot in the door in case, you know, for any reason. I mean, I'd been there for so long. So,
well, that's great that you could do that with that level of flexibility.
Exactly. It was a perfect scenario, and it worked out great. And so then, so I just continued to stay working as a medical assistant just because I was working so little, and it worked for my family, and it still allowed me to have something. And then COVID hit.
Oh, okay. So you stayed working just that minimally?
Just that minimum. I worked that the whole time, and I just stayed home and raised kids basically for that time. I never actually went back to nursing. Sometimes I want to, and other days I don't. You know, but I've been out for a long time. Yeah. So then COVID hit, and then with all of the mandates and stuff, I chose not to get the vaccine, and ultimately I was fired January 10th of this year.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was, I take ownership in that. That was my choice.
Yeah. And it should be.
Yeah. It was my choice, and I don't regret it, and I don't look back and wish I would have done things differently at the time. That was just, I was headstrong about it. And, so that was pretty tough being let go after 22 years. With
all of your like friendships and
friendships and just my tenure
and be part of your life and your identity and who you are.
I mean, 22 years that was my first medical assisting job, my first anything in the medical field in the same department. But let me go back really quick. I will say though that a lot of the when you have worked as a medical assistant for 25 years, for 22 years, you were working with a lot of these same doctors who actually saw you go through nursing school. And it didn't make sense to a lot of people why I was still there as a medical assistant when I had become a nurse.
Were you open with what had gone on and how the anxiety had taken over? Or is that something you've only talked about later on? I did
talk about it. It gave me anxiety even talking about it because I felt shameful. I felt like I failed. It was like that feeling of like, other nurses do this. Like, why me? Why did this happen to me? why did I have those feelings? And I think it took about 5 years of feeling shameful, of feeling like I wanted to hide when I was around certain people, or like when they'd be like, oh, I thought, after a time, you'd see certain people that you hadn't seen in a while, and they're like, wait, I thought you were a nurse. Like, what do you do? Why are you here? And it, just having to explain to them is like, it's like, a lot of people understand, totally understand where I'm coming from. And then there's lots who like probably support me and understand, but they didn't really understand. They're like, that's like, seems like a waste, And so,
well, but I mean, how would you know?
Exactly.
Unless you tried it, unless you did it. And I mean, I think it would be hard to find anybody who's done or who's gone through every choice in their life and been like, yep, this is it. I think we all go through things where we're like, oh my gosh, I want to do this. And then you start doing it, you're like, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Right, exactly. And, I think that I still have that nature of like wanting to help people, and like wanting to teach people and like help in that way. And so that was part of my journey, I think, to a lot of awakening that's happened in my life. And so I eventually started to feel a lot more comfortable with my decision, and a lot of people started to understand like where I was coming from, and I started to be more accepting of this is just my path.
Yeah.
But I would say that, fast forward to COVID now, there was just a lot of things that I felt were off with, just the things that we were being told and stuff like that. And so one day, I decided that I was going to start my own Instagram account. And at the time, I just was pissed.
Yeah.
I was pissed. And so I just went on there, I created an account, and I just said, One Pissed Mama. And it was available, and I said, cool.
Yeah.
we're just gonna go for it. And for me, it allowed me truly to speak my truth. It was a way to, I didn't tell people about it. There's actually, I have most of my family. And I even have some really good friends that still don't even know that I actually have an account.
Yeah.
Or like that I've been talking or anything. And so, I just wanted to come from a place of like teaching people or like having discussions. And
well, and that's what I was going to say. It's like, there's so many, you mentioned that you want to help people, you want to teach people. Like, there's so many ways to do that. You don't have to be on the one path. I mean, you just got me thinking. I did a training last year, in 2021, to be kind of like this advocate program. And I thought, oh, this will be great, blah, blah, blah. And then after I completed the training and really understood what it was, I was like, no, this is not for me.
Yeah.
And so, I just said, hey, you know what? I've really come to the conclusion that this is too much of an ask, or too big of a responsibility for me to do right now. I mean, I certainly felt bad, but ultimately, once I said that and said, hey, I'm not going to be able to commit to this, I felt so much better. I was like, oh my God, I'm free.
It's like a release. Yeah.
So it was so nice to recognize that. But that's what I was saying. Like, so many people go through things like that where you think something is going to be exactly what you want, and then you get into it and you're like, oh my gosh, this really isn't for me after all.
Yeah, exactly. And so I have learned, though, over time that, there, like you were saying, there are different ways that people can help others. And so I feel like a lot of the things that I have done and researched and shared has helped others. And so I've felt that, and I've had people say, thank you so much. And, it's just, it's really eye-opening how, with the right perspective, you can actually help other people too, without having to be the nurse. You could, answer questions and I don't know, stuff like that. So.
Well, and I think one of the things that's great about what you're doing and the things that you share is that we're in this information age right now where there's so much information, and it's literally exhausting.
Oh yeah.
Because there's so much information. And so, number one, it's great because you can literally, like I was just saying before we started recording, like, oh my God, I use Google for everything. Like I just Google this, Google that. And then I laugh at my Google history because I'm like, wow, I Google a lot of things. But then it's also, well, what do you believe? Like, what Google has all these articles, so like, which one is correct? I mean, even recipes, right?
Yeah.
Like, you Google a recipe, and there's a million recipes for the same thing, and I'm like, so should I bake it at 350 or 425? I mean, that's a significant difference. So, I mean, there's so many things out there. So I think it's so overwhelming, and I think a lot of people get very overwhelmed, and as a result, I mean, you see at any time something major happens in the news, right?
Yeah.
There's people just reposting,
yeah.
and then it turns out that whatever people started reposting like isn't even true.
Right.
And so it's like, oh gosh, and then people are like, well, I didn't know, and it's like, yeah, nobody knew because nobody bothered to actually like research. Like, I mean, there's this one gal that I follow, and I love her stance on anything that's going on is because she's always like, I'm going to wait a couple days because I want to see what happens. Like, so
That's
I'm going to wait a couple
smart.
days, and then I will give you, because people will like start messaging her. What do you think about? What do you think? And she's like, all I know is literally what you know right now, which is the tip of the iceberg. So let's see what happens in a couple of days.
Right. That's actually a smart way of looking at it.
Yeah. I mean, and it's so, I think it's so, yeah, it's smart. That's literally the only thing you can say because we don't know.
Exactly.
And we're only shown certain things or certain headlines. I mean, even, I don't know how accurate this is now, but I remember for a while, especially with like celebrity deaths or something, because remember when it was real popular a few years ago for there to be like these celebrity death hoaxes, and it was like all of a sudden it'd be like, oh my God, so-and-so died, but then you're like, wait, it's reported by some weird ass website, and so people were like, I'm only gonna believe it if TMZ posted because they're like founded by lawyers or something, so they had all this stuff in place. So I remember I would always just go to TMZ first and be like, are they saying it? Did that person, did that really happen?
What did they say about it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think that was a huge learning curve for me too. You know, when I would start to post, and you know, I just started posting without announcing it to anybody.
Yeah.
And I just wanted people to come organically. Like if you wanted to come, great. And I think that it picked up, my first one picked up pretty quick. And I was like, wow.
Like 10,000 people.
I did.
Right? I think I was one of the first 200.
You were pretty quick. You've been there with me, and I appreciate your support. And then it just, with the amount of, you know, what I was going to say was, you know, I had to learn a lot along the way, you know, like finding reputable sources. Right. Finding actual research. Yeah. Like it took a lot of work. Yeah. It took a lot of work where you're like, but that doesn't make sense. Let's go somewhere else. Let's look. And so I have had to learn. And sometimes I would post things and be like, oh, I'm sorry. I was wrong. But I wanted to own that. I really wanted to be totally myself, really authentic, and own anything, like own my own mistakes.
Well, and I think that's also so important, that level of authenticity, because I think that's something that builds trust, right? Where, you know, you can say like, oh, I mean, I think we're even seeing it now with some people as more and more information comes out about all the things that have gone on over the last couple of years. And some people are like, oh, wow, like, I owe a lot of apologies to people because I was dying on this hill and now we've found out that this isn't. So I think one of the things that's important to, you know, discuss or just to like say is like, you are very much freedom based. And I think that's why you and me very much clicked from the beginning, because it wasn't about political sides. It wasn't about, you know, oh, doing this or doing that. It was more about like freedom and the freedom that we are given or that we have and that we're as Americans.
Right, exactly.
And I mean, I've always been incredibly patriotic. I'm a huge supporter of our military. You know, my dad's a Vietnam vet from the 101st Airborne in the Army, and I think that's like so wonderful. Yes. So I think, you know, that the freedoms that we have as Americans should be like fought for over and over and over again. Of course,
I agree.
So that's, you know, been interesting to watch over the last few years as we've, you know, seen it range from, you know, the are people choosing or not choosing to get vaccinated? Are people, you know, with the abortion topic coming back up?
Yeah. It's like every topic. And you know, the crazy part about it is it's amazing to me how polarizing everything is these days.
Absolutely.
Like you cannot just be you can't just be pro-life or pro-choice. You like nobody can say anything because you're either a bad person or you're a good person or no, you're bad or you're bad. It doesn't even there's no like middle ground. And so it becomes, and then like when you just watch some things, you're just thinking, is this ever going to get any better?
I know. It is insane when you think about it like that. And it's funny because I feel like the more conversations that I have, and that's the thing that keeps coming up, is it's like we're in this period of time where it's either A or it's B, and you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, depending on who you're talking to. It's like, or everybody is like forced to choose a side. It's like there can no longer be like, well, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this, or I lean this way. You know, like I'm more where I'm like, I don't want anybody but me in charge of how I spend my money, or of what I do with my body, of what I choose for my health. Mm-hmm. But it's almost like, well, but you have to choose. I'm like, well, I don't want to choose. I want to own my autonomy. I want to be in charge of me.
Totally.
And I feel like most people at the end of the day want that too.
I think that's what everybody wants.
I mean,
but I don't think that people just realize, like I don't think people really know how to get there.
Yeah.
I think they get too caught up in like just big topics.
Yeah.
You know, and politics is so dirty. I mean, I think everybody could possibly say at some point they were to the point in their lives where they were like, oh, I don't talk politics. Like, I used to say that all the time.
Oh, totally.
I'd be like, oh, I don't.
Somebody, I was always taught that, like,
never
you don't talk about money, and you don't talk about politics unless it's like with your family or your significant other, like very, very tight
like you don't talk about it. And here we are, like that's the only thing that is out there.
I know, it's totally
and you have
wild.
to pick sides, and it's every day I scratch my head and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
And so I will say, though, that one of the things for me is I can have pretty strong opinions about a lot of things.
Sure.
And I know that about myself. But I've always wanted to hear somebody else's perspective on things. Mm-hmm. And so I have always, since day one that I've been out speaking and talking about things, like I'm always looking for that DM that says, I see it differently. Mm-hmm. I thrive off of somebody who goes, I just don't agree with what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Most 95% of the time, people agree with me on whatever it is. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't follow me.
Sure.
But in my ideal situation, I would love if most of my DMs were like, I see it differently. Mm-hmm. I don't see it that way, because I think that's what challenges me to see people, you know, just like, okay, I'm not always right. It's not just my way of thinking or my way of living. Like, I want to know, like, oh, that makes sense.
Well, and they kind of talk too, where like there's so many people these days who have only surrounded themselves with people who are like-minded. So essentially they're just in these echo chambers.
Exactly.
Where, you say something, everybody's like, yeah. Yeah. And that's not how life is. I mean, I think I've said this now on every single podcast that I've put out there, is that like we're not all meant to be carbon copies of one another.
Right.
So we should have differences of opinions on many things. It's just it's unfortunate that it's just like there's these two camps and you have to be 100% with one or 100% with the other when that just isn't logical.
Right.
Because there are so many different topics that roll up under these things.
Oh yeah.
And the majority of us don't agree with everything that, everything on this list or everything on that list.
Oh yeah. That's the reason why the independents are probably looking at it, the world going, are we serious right now?
Yeah.
But I do think that most people are probably towards the middle. Yeah. They might lean a certain way, but now I feel like lately it's just like been to the extremes. Mm-hmm. It's just we're a mess.
I mean, I remember before all of this, like, so before 2020, if anybody were to ever ask me, like, you know, where are you, like, politically? And I'd always say, like, I'm, like, fiscally conservative, right? Like,
a lot of people say
that. I'm fiscally conservative, but, like, I'm socially more liberal. Like, I don't care who you fuck. I don't care who you want to marry. Like, I don't care what you're doing in the privacy of your own home. Like, I literally don't care because I don't want people to care that about me.
Right.
I don't want anybody to have an opinion on the way that I choose to live my life. And I mean, I think that that's something that's been very, very long standing with me. Like, I always say, you know, to my friends, like, unless you're being, like, physically or emotionally hurt by another person in your life, or if you're doing dangerous things to yourself, you do you.
Right.
Like, I will be your biggest cheerleader. I might go, wow, I would never choose that.
Right.
But I would hope that most of my friends would say the same things about me. Like, wow, you're going off and doing that? Like, I would never do that. Cool. Well, I'm going to go and I'll send you a photo.
Right.
I'll let you know how it is when I get back.
Totally.
But I think that's, like, the beauty of life. But now it's so crazy. I mean, kind of like what you said earlier about, you know, politics being so at the forefront of everything.
Everything.
I mean, I never thought too much. It wasn't really anything that I would talk about. Obviously, like, when election times would roll around, I'd be like, okay, let me read up on these candidates and let me see, like, what makes sense for, or what are these propositions I want to vote for or not vote for or whatever. But I didn't feel like it really trickled so much into my personal life, into my, like, you know, my love life rather, you know, and now it's very much at the forefront, which is so crazy to me. But it's also sometimes when I see certain things or somebody says something, it's either like we just agree to disagree, which I think is wonderful. I mean, I definitely have friends who are way, way, way on opposite ends of some of the topics that I'm, you know, on the other side of, but it's totally okay because we can still be friends.
Right.
But
that's the beauty of it. Yeah. There's so many that don't do that. They kind of, you know, they just alienate that person and be like, well, if we don't have the same outlook on life, then, I mean, think of how much there is to learn from somebody who actually doesn't think like you. And those are my favorite. Those are my favorite when I actually learn something from somebody else.
Oh my gosh, it's the best. It's funny. I was texting with one of my girlfriends last night who recently got a new job. And I was saying, like, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, you know, it's going really well. She's like, but it's so different from my last company, where my last company was, like, a lot of, like, millennials and everybody was, like, really cool and hip. And she's like, this company's a little bit more, she's like, everybody's so smart. There's, like, PhDs and MBAs. She's like, oh, I'm definitely, like, the dumbest person here. And I'm like, that's the best place to be because she's brilliant.
Right.
But I'm like, if you actually feel that way, like, think about how much you're going to learn and how quickly
how much growth you're going to have. Totally.
Yeah. And that's what I said. I mean, at my current company, I am probably one of the older people, or like one of the oldest people there, which makes me laugh. Just because it does. Because I came from a massive company where there was, like, you know, people in their 70s still working there, right? And I was like, oh, okay, I'm just a kid. And now I'm like, wow, I'm older than a lot of you. But I love it because there's so many really smart people. And a lot of them are a lot younger than me, but I learn from them all the time. And that, to me, I think has accelerated my growth as a leader, as a businesswoman, and just in my approach to so many different things.
Yeah.
So
good for you.
I love it. Yeah. I'm like,
awesome.
I'll proudly be the dummy in the room. Like, teach me things.
Yeah. I mean, every day I'm looking for that. That's the reason why I do a lot of question boxes, or I'll do a lot of, what are your thoughts on this topic? And then I'm like, as I'm reading them, you know, I'm thinking, oh, like, did I really post this stuff? I'm like, okay, so I always have to do like a precursor, like, okay, we're going to have different opinions here.
Yeah.
You may not like the other opinion, but I am going to display both of them because I truly think I want people to see, even if I don't agree with it, I want people to see, you know, that here's what somebody thinks about that, but here's another outlook. Like, you know, have the discussion, see things from different perspectives.
Well, and I think it's good too, because just because somebody has a different perspective than you, or somebody vehemently disagrees with you on a certain topic, to where you might be like, I cannot literally believe that you think that is true.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that they're bad people.
Oh, totally.
And I think that that's where things have gotten lost too, is that there's become so much hate.
Oh, it's terrible.
People have a difference of opinion, and it's like, wait a minute, like, 50% of us cannot think that the other 50% of us are these evil trolls that are just awful human beings.
Right. Exactly.
So
I know. And that's the thing is like, it doesn't matter what spectrum you are. We're all on our different paths. Mm-hmm. We're all learning every day. And for some reason, social media it's just made everything 10 times worse. Yeah. And I can say that I think a lot of like big accounts are the big culprit to a lot of the stuff that's going on. They like to just, I don't know, sometimes when they say things, you're like, did you have to say that? Like, do you know that you literally just divided like half the population?
Right.
Just, you know what I mean? So it's so polarizing, and I've actually started to like kind of cut back on a lot of things because I don't really want to be like that. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's just such a learning process.
It is. It is. And then even like within, you can look at certain people on one side of something, and then like even within there's people who are like, oh, well, I don't like this part of our group.
Right.
Like,
right.
Wait a minute.
I know.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It's very crazy.
But I've learned a lot. I've grown a lot. I've been more aware of things just in my own character, learning just about myself.
Yeah.
And so it's been really good.
What do you think the biggest key learning about yourself has been over the last, I guess probably just even since January? I mean, the last couple of years, but I mean, I think that's probably, getting let go and now saying, okay, well, who am I without this job? Who am I without this career, without this like part of my life and these people?
Right.
What's that been like, that journey?
It's been good. Like I love, I always wonder if things happen for a reason because, at the time I got let go, it was also the time that my daughter was starting softball and she had games every weekend. Aww. I would have missed it. So, it's just, if I had worked, I would have missed a lot of her games. And I loved seeing her play. And I was like, that's so weird that literally like the next weekend after her game started.
Oh yeah.
So it was just, I've learned that maybe things happen for a reason. Mm-hmm. And, I've grown so much, I would say, in my life, probably the past 5 years, like accepting me leaving nursing, and never knowing really where that could lead.
Sure.
Like if I went back or not, and what else would I do, or, things like that. And I would say another huge lesson that I've learned, or that I've been more aware of, is just really to see different sides to different things, and to share those the other side, to be kind of fair.
No, I think that's great. I mean, one thing that I've tried to do for quite a long time is like reverse the situation, right? Typically that's in a personal life type situation where, my feelings are hurt or I'm about to do something, like say if I'm going to back out of plans and kind of say like, okay, well, let me flip the situation around. Like, how would I feel if this was happening to me? And trying to like look at things from like all different perspectives.
Yes, exactly.
Because that's where I think a lot of people get lost and they just sit there and like, oh my God, but like me, I'm feeling this way. It's
without
like, okay,
thinking about like, well, what if something's going on in their own life, or what if,
And that's what's, I have a team of about 14 people, and one of the responsibilities I've placed on myself is, not only being a good leader, obviously that's obvious, I think, but also like teaching them like, hey, these are the perspectives of which I'm looking at all of these things, or I'm looking at this situation. I'm looking at it from this perspective, from that perspective. So it's not just like this singular view for us to get where we need to go, or for why I made a decision, because there's so many things that come into play. And I think the more that we can learn about ourselves and how we kind of like work through those different times, the better. It's funny because when I started off this podcast, like self-awareness was, I think, the biggest topic.
Yeah.
Because I had gone through such a journey this year, and I had really committed to myself to understanding myself and like why I feel the way I do, and letting myself feel all the emotions, and I think it's so important because then you can recognize why you're responding the way that you are, or why something's making you feel a certain way, or how you're reacting. I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
So it's,
I've had, I would say I've had some awareness, like those epiphany things where, it's just spending too much time on social media.
Oh yeah.
Neglecting a lot of things, or maybe should have been paying attention more to other things, areas of your life or whatever it is. And, I think the past few months I've kind of realized, like, this is not the whole thing, So there's been, a lot of just little changes too. And it's going good.
That's good.
Yeah.
So now, given that we're now at a place where we're seeing, mandates being dropped as far as the vaccine goes, and, companies, and I certainly know there's like nursing shortages, medical staffing shortages, and I've also seen companies who have started asking back employees who they let go, who chose to not get a vaccine. Have any of those things come your way?
No.
Interesting.
I've heard nothing. I'm also, in California.
Yeah.
And, I think everything's a little bit harder in California with a lot of these things. But no, I haven't heard anything.
Have you thought about what you would do were they to call you and ask you to come back?
I don't think I would.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say no because I'm not in that situation, but I don't think I would.
Yeah.
But I think at the time I'd have to evaluate my life and see. Yeah.
So have you thought about what it is, what is like the next 2 to 5 years look like, and what other do you have any
oh my gosh that's
things
that's
that
a
you
good
want to
question.
dive into?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think I want to start looking to see if there is something for nursing, something that would make me happy. And I think that was like a lot of the what I really loved about the past few years with me starting my account and talking about things was it allowed me to help teach, and it allowed me to help see, and from a nursing perspective that's not in nursing, that I can see I've worked as the nurse and I've worked as the medical assistant, and now there's this disconnect now between the patient and the system. So I can see that nurses are amazing, hardworking, badass people who are amazed.
Hell yeah. One of my best friends is
they
a nurse, and
they work their ass
literally
off.
saved my life.
Oh yeah, they are true heroes in the hospital.
Totally.
And then I can see the nervous, I'm scared, I don't want to go to see the doctor. I can see that perspective, and so I think that there has been a little bit of more advocacy for, understanding this is the healthcare side. And then here's the patient side. Yeah. And where
bridging that gap.
Yeah, exactly. And because I'm not in it.
Right.
I think a lot of people don't want to talk because they're actually in that. They out of fear of being fired, or it coming back to haunt them or something like that. And because I was out of work, it allowed me to be a lot more free. Yeah. It was okay, well, nobody owns me. I don't have anything to worry about. So let's talk about things, and let's see the different perspectives when it comes to healthcare. Yeah. So so I think that it's helped me. You have a
little consulting business idea on the cusp of it right here.
Gosh, I don't know. So I don't really know where it leads, but every day's a new day, and you never know what it'll bring. Yeah. So
I don't know. I think that you're onto something, because I know, I'm the type of person where there's people who will be like, oh, I never go to the doctor. And I'm like, okay, but what if you don't feel well? And I'll just power through, and then blah, blah. Or I'm always more proactive, or I'm like, okay, I'm going to go get my skin checked every year. I'm going to go to the dentist every 6 months. I'm going to go to the doctor and get an annual physical. Right. And I want you to do the blood work. I want to make sure everything on the inside is working as it's supposed to. So I don't necessarily have a fear of it. I more have a fear of not, because then I'm like, oh God, what if I haven't been in a couple of years, and what if there's something festering that I never knew about? Right. But I think that for those people who aren't like me, having just a resource of somebody, gosh, I probably have 3 different nurse friends that I cycle between asking questions.
Yeah.
Ranging from literally like, hey, this is going on in my you know what, to like, why do I have this headache?
Yeah.
Or like, what does this mean?
These
or
are my symptoms. What does this mean? Is this something I should go to the doctor for? Or...
Oh my gosh, yeah. I had some blood work back in March, and there was a couple of things, so I'm like screenshotting it, like texting. I'm like, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this one mean? Why does this look at how high this is? And she's like, you're fine. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, good.
Yes, it's always good to have like a resource. You know, like I always thought it'd be really cool to have a lawyer.
Yeah.
Like somebody like a really close friend that's a lawyer. Because then like everything that's happened, I'm always like, is this legal? Yeah. Like I want to know without having to like look it up and like hear 1,000 stories. Like it'd be nice to have a doctor.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to, all the friends.
Right. I know.
All the friends just have like their own like a hairdresser. Everybody has a hairdresser, but just a masseuse or like a cook. Like, okay, let's get together at the cook.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Yeah.
It is great to have a diverse group of friends, so you can reach out and be like, hey, does this look good? Everything okay here? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, but we'll see what my future where it takes me.
Yeah.
But for now it's been good. My kids are really busy. Really busy. I drive a lot. I'm always in the car because I have to take my daughter 30 minutes each way to school.
Oh, okay.
And I do that twice. And then my other one, she does, basketball, and my youngest does soccer now. And it's like weekends and then like after school. And so I'm pretty busy.
Yeah.
I usually middle of my day, I have some time.
Yeah.
But
I mean, yeah, I was visiting with a friend a couple of weeks ago, my friend Jen, who was on the podcast a couple of weekends ago.
She's amazing.
And we were on our way to dinner, and she's like, hey, we're going to swing by my niece's volleyball game. And I was like, cool. I play volleyball. I love watching volleyball. I don't care what level it's at, So we walk into the gym, and then all of a sudden I realize, I go, wait a minute. It's Saturday. Why are they having a volleyball game on Saturday? And she's like, I don't know. That's when they have their games on, like on the weekends now. And I'm just thinking, that is so different than when I was a kid. We had our volleyball games on like Tuesdays and Thursdays or Mondays and Wednesdays or something. But weekends were not for, maybe we had practice or like we had a tournament, obviously, like that was over a weekend. But it wasn't like our game against the rival high school was on Saturday night at 6:00.
Yeah.
So I really give props to all of you parents who have kids in sports, because I feel like it's a full-time job.
It is. I always wonder how parents who work do all of it, and they manage too, and they're amazing.
Oh my gosh, I know. It's crazy. I remember when COVID first hit and we all got sent home, I called all of the parents on my team into a meeting one day, and I just said, hey, look, I know that we have no idea what the hell is going on. I know now you're not only a full-time, member of this company, but now you're also a full-time teacher and a full-time, caregiver because your kids are at home.
Right.
So manage your day as you need to. I know you have to balance it with, either your significant other or if you have other family members, but don't feel like I'm expecting you to be chained to your desk you've set up in your kitchen.
Yes. Yes.
While all of this gets sorted out, because I remember one of my girlfriends in Texas called me because they were doing, obviously like everybody, they're teaching their kids at home and helping their kids.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, how are you guys managing? And she was like, well, we're kind of like trading off like every couple hours, like working with the kids or working.
Yeah.
And she was like, but you'll laugh. She's like, D came upstairs the other day after 30 minutes and he looked at me and was like, yeah, I'm good on 6th grade math. I don't know what's going on with that.
No. Well, especially the way they teach it now with Common Core. I'm like, I can help my daughter and my kids, but I'm like, if you want me to learn the way that if you want me to help you with the way they're doing it now, no. Like, we're carrying the one.
Yes,
here, okay?
yes, we're still
carrying the one. And then you're going to go to school and they're going to say, no, we're not doing that way. Like, that's the only way I know how to do math.
Yeah. I know. I've seen some of that. I'm like, I don't even know what this is. And I'm like really good at math.
Yeah. I love math. I
love math too. I would say I am/was. I do have my calculator pinned to my, toolbar on my computer, but It's because I got so used to it.
Yeah.
Although I learned something this year from TikTok that it still is like one of the most fascinating things that I've learned, and I love telling people about this because a lot of people like didn't know it. Did you know that percentages are reversible? And so what I mean by that is if you were going to say like 8% of 25 is the same as 25% of 8.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's like the coolest thing ever. Because then it becomes so easy.
You do that on the calculator?
No, you're just doing it. Well, like, okay, so 25% of 8, right? That's easy because that's 2. But 8% of 25 is also 2.
Oh.
Right?
That's crazy.
Good party trick.
That is a party trick. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was going to say your friend Jen. Mm-hmm. Remember I sent you a text and I said, oh my gosh, remind me to tell you the story, and I forgot to tell you. I would just say really quick, there was a time during the podcast when she was talking about, or I don't remember if you brought it up or how it was, but it was about being honest with cops. When you get pulled over, just be honest.
If you know
just be honest. If you are speeding, just say it. That's what they want. They're looking for you. Just come on. Just be honest, right?
Yeah.
So I remember it was so funny. I was driving to Tahoe with my husband, and I was reading a magazine, and literally I was reading. It was about. It was so long ago, but it was about. It was an interview or something like that, an article about a cop, and he was talking about things when you get pulled over and stuff like that. And literally I'm reading this and it was saying one of the best things you can do is just be honest.
Yeah.
Like listen and just be honest. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you're speeding, just own it. If you ran the stop sign, own it.
Yeah.
Okay. We know what you did pretty much. So just at this point, own it.
Yeah.
So, I was reading that, and then all of a sudden, my husband got pulled over.
Oh no!
Literally,
you're like,
and I'm reading it, and I'm like, and he was speeding.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, when they ask you, be honest.
Yeah.
So here comes, the police officer comes around, and he's like, I caught you for speeding. Do you know how fast you were going? And he said, I know I was going over the speed limit. I was going about 80 or. At the time, I don't know. It was over the speed limit. And he basically just said, okay. He said, there's been a lot of deer and accidents going on. Just please don't speed when you're in this area. And we got off. Yeah. But it's like, that's the thing. It's just so funny how I was literally just reading it. And then all of a sudden he gets pulled over. Yeah. And it's like, when you're honest. Yeah. Look what happens,
No, it's true. I mean, I wasn't kidding when I said I've got pulled over 4 times for riding in the carpool lane. And every single time I have been honest because I knew what I was doing. Yeah. And the most recent one, I was like, there's no way I'm getting out of this. God has smiled upon me 3 times. There's no way I'm getting out of this one. But what had happened was I was going on to the freeway it was kind of like a circular on-ramp. Yeah. With 2 lanes. One was a carpool lane and one was the normal lane. And for whatever reason, it was the middle of the day, but for whatever reason, the lights were on. And so the carpool lane was being, was legit at that time of day when normally it would have been just a 2-lane on-ramp. Mm-hmm. Well, so I'm going in the carpool lane and then I realized that the flashing light's on. So I'm like, shit, I should move over. But there were so many cars in both lanes that there was no way for me to move over because the lane that I was in, those people were expecting to keep going. Yeah. And this lane was so full of cars that I wouldn't have been able to get over. So I was just like, fuck it, I'll just go. So I did, and I got pulled over, and the guy was so mad. I mean, this was also probably late 2020 maybe. So it was still a lot of stuff was going on. So he pulls me over, he's yelling at me. He's like, do you know why I pulled you over? And I go, yeah. I go, because I came on to the freeway in the carpool lane and I'm clearly not a carpool. Right. And he's like, well, why did you do that if you knew what you were doing? And I said, honestly, I got on in that lane. And then when I realized that the light was on, there were so many cars in the other lane that I wasn't able to slide over. And the people behind me were expecting to go. So I just decided to go. Yeah. And so he's just yelling at me. And he's like, I'm going to let you go. He's like, but you need to know. He's like, with everything that's going on right now, people are crazy out here. He's like, people are speeding. People are driving around with guns. He's like, if you did that and the wrong person saw you and was pissed off, he's like, you just need to be so careful. And I was like, thank you. I appreciate the advice. I appreciate you looking out for me. I promise I will, no matter what time of the day, if I'm by myself, I will go in the normal lane. Right. But I mean, he gave me an earful, but he let me off. I remember I called my mom And I was like, oh my God, guess what? And she's like, what? And I was like, I just got pulled over again for the carpooling. She's like, did you finally get a ticket? I was like, no, I actually didn't. Like, what?
Yeah, I've gotten off a few too. I've gotten off 3, and every single time I just was totally honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a fix-it ticket one time for tinted windows.
Oh yeah, I got a fix-it ticket too. And I also, apparently you're not, I was in the carpool lane, but I have a fast track and it was in the Bay Area. So I was like, well, I have a fast track, and even though it said under construction, but I was like, but it still is a fast track lane. So he pulled me over, and I was like, I have a fast track, like smiling, like I have a fast track. You're not gonna give me a ticket, are you? And he didn't give me a ticket, but he gave me a fix-it ticket because my ID didn't have my correct address. But I was like, dude, I'm literally moving. Like I was about to close escrow on this house. So I was like, you're going to make me change my address to my apartment to then change it again to... I was like, can I just buy you a coffee? He's like, that would be bribery, ma'am.
I know.
I'm like, okay, just give me the fix-it ticket then. Jeez.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah.
Yeah. But hey. Well, this was really awesome talking with you. It was so great to meet you and see you.
I know, finally.
I know we've tried to get together multiple times and our schedules have never aligned. So hopefully we can make it happen now that we have met. And we're like, hey, okay, we are normal.
Yes, we are normal.
Well, if you want, you can share your Instagram handle if people want to check out.
Oh, it's One Pissed Mama 3.0.
All right.
Yeah.
3.0. That
3.0.
tells you.
That was my third one. Yes.
Third account.
The first 2 are censored.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. A whole other topic. We can sit and talk for an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, everybody, as always, thank you for listening. And you can find me at Round 2 Podcast on Instagram and on TikTok. Don't make fun of me on TikTok, please. Just kidding. You totally can, because I make fun of myself. And thanks again for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Bye.